Hello ladies and gentlemen. So if you clicked on this video, chances are you've been struggling and indecisive about which one of these lenses you want to buy, and if you're anything like me, you've been deliberating it for like 3 weeks straight and you have extreme decision paralysis. So in this video, hopefully I can help you overcome that and we can figure out which lens is actually better for your needs. So let's get into it. So just a quick precursor, I've had the Sigma 30 for about 6 years. It was actually the first lens I bought when I got my Sony A6000 back in like 2018, 2019, something like that. So I am slightly biased towards this lens because I've taken it to a couple of different countries, most of the United States, and I've taken like thousands of pictures with it. So keep that in mind. The other lens, the Sony 35mm, I've had this for a couple of weeks. You know, I rent lenses. I use them for a couple of weeks. That's what I do. I have a YouTube channel. So I definitely have slight bias towards the Sigma, so just keep that in mind, but let's get into it. So the Sony 35mm, as you can see, it is tiny. This was made for the NEX lineup back in 2012, 2013, something like that. And like compactness, thankfully, was the priority back then. This is the kind of lens that made me switch from Canon in the first place. You know, a tiny lens that gets the job done. So I like it, feels good, you know, decently high quality. The Sigma 30 is definitely compact, but it's a little bit bigger. I mean, if you take the lens hood off here and then the back cap and then compare them, the 30 is definitely a bit bigger than the Sony 35. But it's not big enough to be like problematic or cumbersome. And with that increased size, you do get a little bit more of a hefty body here. It feels pretty good in the hand. So there's not really much of a difference. I mean, the Sigma feels a little nicer. The Sony's a little bit more compact. And then in terms of like actual usability, the Sony 35, given its size, definitely feels pretty good. It feels nicely balanced on like, you know, the A6000, for example. It's compact, but it's still just big enough to have like a good gripping point, but it's light enough to where you can, you know, you can use it one-handed, no issue, easily adjust the controls, the settings, that sort of thing. Then the Sigma, on the other hand, is definitely a little bit bigger, as we talked about, has a much better gripping point. Actually, this focusing wing here is very, very grippy. I've found that's usually how I hold the lens, much like that, you know, pretty standard. And it's still light enough to where like you can kind of use it one-handed, though it is a little bit like front heavy, obviously. The big strength where the Sony 35 shines is the fact that it does have optical image stabilization, and that doesn't matter as much these days because most bodies are stabilized, but my A6000 is not, and thus having image stabilization is actually huge. I honestly wish the Sigma 30 had image stabilization, but that would add to the cost and everything, so I understand why it doesn't. Now, as for the difference in autofocus, I mean, these are both E-mount lenses. Sony's autofocus systems are like insane, so they're both very good. However, I have noticed that given the Sony 35 is 13 years old, it can struggle a little bit in like dark conditions, like low light conditions. I noticed this definitely hunts a lot more versus the Sigma 30. The Sigma 30 is just, it's amazing, honestly. No complaints. I've barely ever missed focus with it, even in like crappy lighting conditions. They're both good, but my hit rate with the Sigma has been a little bit higher, so that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, but now let's talk about the big daddy, image quality. So I'll be flashing a bunch of sample pictures up on the screen here. Like I said, I've had the Sony for a couple of weeks, and I've had the Sigma for actually 6 years, so yeah. The Sony delivers some good results, even shooting wide open at F1.8. I really have no complaints there. I mean, it's a good lens. It looks good. You can look at the pictures on the screen that I'm flashing up here. I really have no complaints about it. Subject isolation for like taking portraits of people looks good. Bokeh looks pretty good. It has no distortion issues, no flare issues, no chromatic aberration really to speak of. It's a good lens. It is definitely a good lens. The Sigma 30 though, man, oh my god, this is scientifically one of the sharpest lenses for Sony cameras. Now, I don't put much stock into like MTF graphs and sharpness tests and that sort of thing. I just, you know, use the lens, and if it looks good to my eyes, it's good enough. But yeah, the Sigma 30 just delivers insane results. Even shooting wide open, you know, you've got a pretty thin focus plane, but you can get amazing, amazing results. Stopping down to like f8, you can do landscapes, cityscapes, anything with this thing. It does have some slight flare issues, like you'll get a little bit of ghosting and a decent amount of loss of contrast when shooting into the sun, but that can be mostly remedied by not shooting into the sun, and then of course using the included lens hood that just screws right onto the front like that. And it also does struggle a little bit with chromatic aberrations, you know, like pupil fringing on bright shiny objects, but it hasn't been bad enough to where it's like been an issue, so to speak. So yeah, between the two for image quality, the Sony 35 is great. Don't get me wrong, I have no complaints about it, but the Sigma 30 is just on a different wavelength. So the last point to touch on is price. So the Sony 35mm is around $450 to $500-ish brand new. Pretty expensive for a lens that came out 13 years ago, but you know, you're getting a good value out of it. The Sigma 30 on the other hand, it used to be like $250. They've since raised the price to about $300 brand new, which I think for what you're getting is still like incredibly good. In fact, when I first switched to Sony back, you know, 6 years ago or something like that, a big reason I bought the Sigma 30 as my first lens was because of the price. I was like an absolute starving artist back then. I mean, I still am, but like, you know, I can actually afford to eat now. Back then I was prioritizing camera equipment over food, but you know how it goes. But yeah, the price of this is just, I don't know, it's just a good value. So this is the part of the video where I'd say like, oh, it depends on your needs, it depends on what you're looking for. But you clicked on this video so a random guy on the internet can tell you what to buy, so a random guy on the internet can, you know, end your decision paralysis. So I'm just gonna say it. Buy the Sigma 30. You can support the channel by buying it in the description. Click the link down there. And yeah, that sums it up, guys. And if you still can't decide which lens you want, I have 2 complete reviews on it that you can find right there. So yeah, go watch those. We'll catch you next time.